All right, so now that we have done our background, and you notice on mine I've done a warm color background, when you get this back, you're going to see that all this tissue paper has been removed. So that all you should have left is whatever color stuck to your page. Okay. If you have a few spots where it remained white, that just means that was probably a spot that didn't get hit with as much water. But really, however these turned out, they really look, in my opinion, pretty cool. So once we've done that, then we're going to add a little bit of paint. So when we add paint for this cherry blossom branch, basically what that will involve is your teacher is going to put a little bit of black paint right on the bottom, and then you will tip it to see if you can get it to branch off and create a realistic looking branch. We will have a small brush so that we can add some of our own details as a very last step if we would like. So here we go. So we'll just try to put a little puddle of paint close to the bottom there. And now we want to see that kind of move. If you can get it to branch off, that's great. Sometimes you can tap underneath it. And this is one of those ones where we just kind of let it do what it does. Okay, there we go. You might love how yours turns out, you might not, but that's part of the fun. Okay, so I let that go pretty much across the whole page. Now that I've done that, I can take some of those wet spots that are there and I can kind of move those out into some skinny branches. It's okay if that goes off the page. So I'm trying to use a very light touch. So that I can get those as skinny as possible. If you think about it, we want those to kind of look like the twigs. I don't know if I really love that big blob at the bottom, so I'm going to actually push that down a bit. And you really do only kind of get one shot at that, so that's why I say, you know, it is what it is, but we can make some kind of slight tweaks to it when we're done, as you can see. As you're doing this, it's probably a good time to think about the balance of your artwork. If you have way too many branches in here, it might look confusing, but if you have a section that's totally empty, it might seem like an unfinished work of art. So even though this branch is really thick down here and these are really skinny up here, I'm shooting for sort of an equal balance. The other thing to think about is the movement of the line. Okay, how would a person looking at your artwork, how would their eye move about the page? So I feel pretty good about what I have going on over here. Maybe I'll put a little tiny stick there. And now I want to kind of make this side match it. I'm adding a little wiggle kind of to my wrist motion to try to make it seem more like a more natural branch shape. You can also push some of that back down if you need more paint in a certain area. You should be able to go off of just the paint that's on the page. I'm happy to add a tiny bit more, but I'd really like it if you didn't need it. There's quite a bit of paint in there already. Okay, so I would say that's good. Every work of art reaches that point where if you add more, it starts to look worse, and I don't want to reach that point yet. So I'm just going to leave that as it is, and then you're going to get time to start painting your branches. At this point, we will pause the video and we will start distributing student projects and paint. Remember, your first step is to tip the paper away from you to create those skinny branches. Then, as a last step, you can use a skinny brush to make even more branches. Okay, so when it's time for you to move on from the branch and onto the part where you are adding those cherry blossoms, at that point you can get your brush out of the way, okay, and then you will get 2 oil pastels. I've got a red and a pink. Now, as you can see by looking at my project, it still has a bit of a glisten to it. It's still wet. So when we're doing these cherry blossoms, we want to make sure that our oil pastels are going up close to the paint, but not exactly touching it. So I'm going to put those in right now. So as you can see, adding the cherry blossoms with the oil pastels, that step goes really quite fast. As you do that, I want you to just consider the balance, meaning are you kind of spreading those around? Because what we don't want is we don't want them all clumped together in one spot, and we don't want certain parts of your tree to look totally missing of those blossoms. We want the person looking at this, we want their eye to kind of hop around the page so that they take in the whole work of art. A couple of tips as you're doing those. I did just a very light touch with these. You don't have as much control with the point of a pastel as you would with a pencil. So don't necessarily try to draw out a flower shape. Instead, I just think of these as kind of little smudges on the paper. And a person looking at those from a distance, their eye will be able to tell that that is a blossom on a tree branch. The very last thing that we can do is, if you remember from the examples of these that we've seen, oftentimes these types of ink drawings or calligraphy, any type of work like that, will usually have some sort of a stamp in the corner, and that's often created with a stamp that's called a signature seal that artist would have that stamps essentially their name on their work. We are going to draw our own, and here's how we're going to do it. You're going to take one of these and set it right there, and then you'll need a pencil for this next part. So you can pick the spot that you think it would look best. I'm going to kind of put it down in this corner. So with my pencil, I'm just going to trace that, and I'm going to do it pretty lightly, just dark enough so that I can see it. Okay. And then with my pencil, I'm going to write my initials in there, and you can write that in a creative way. If you feel like you need some scratch paper so that you can practice your initials, we can give you that. I'm just going to jump in and do it. I'll write my initials R, A. I'll do the kind of cursive A. All right. I like how that looks. I'm just going to take my red pastel and I'm going to go over the top. I definitely recommend keeping things simple because, as we know, tracing with a pastel can be tricky. I got off my line a little, so I'm going to fill that in. You can make changes if you need to. Okay, there we have a little signature seal to go with our completed cherry blossoms project. We'll let those dry and then you're totally done. At this point, we will pause the video so that kids can use the pink and red pastels to put some smudges on the end of their branches for the cherry blossoms. Once you have completed that, you can also use a pencil and one of the little tracing squares to first trace a square for your signature seal, and then trace over the square and the initials that you drew in. You will use a red pastel for that. And then you're done.